Fortunately, the German Greens have gotten the German government to commit to shutting down their reactors. The Swedish Greens have committed to, and have succeeded in having the Swedish government shutting down nuclear. So the notion that the countries that are most progressive on the environment have in any way embraced nuclear isn't true. All right, that would be an AECL feedback thing. Here's our position. And I'll just take speaking from my heart. If having fought the nuclear industry for decades in this country, if I thought for a minute that nuclear energy could be any kind of solution to the climate crisis, given how, as you've already heard, completely terrifying the scenarios are of what happens if we don't reduce greenhouse gas emissions, one could to say, well, okay, so we have to keep the nuclear waste out of the biosphere for the next 250,000 years. Maybe we can figure that out. And so the recent studies show that children living near nuclear reactors have higher cancer rates. Well, maybe we'll move them further away. I mean, you start thinking, we've got to make this work if it's a solution. So the first question is it in any way a solution to the climate crisis? And the answer there is no, because it's very capital intensive. It takes a long time to build a reactor. And for the dollar invested, you reduce very little carbon compared to things like a dollar invested in energy productivity improvements, energy conservation, cogeneration, and increasingly as the price of photovoltaics for solar and the price of wind energy comes down, nuclear just looks like a big fat radioactive white elephant. Add to that the Canadian context. A completely irresponsible, non-transparent, rogue crown corporation that essentially misled their regulator about the fact they hadn't met their license requirements at the NRU in Chalk River, then compounded things by trying to keep their clients from being nervous, their customers from being nervous about the supply of radioisotopes by bluffing the world and pretending we didn't have a crisis at the NRU reactor. If you don't know, they avoided contacting the suppliers of molybdenum-99, which is the key radionuclide for medical isotopes. They avoided contacting the Dutch, Belgian, the French, the German, or the South African reactors to say, we're going to shut down for a while. You guys might want to boost production so that we don't go into a crisis. The so-called worldwide shortage of medical isotopes that occurred through the end of November and December was essentially North American. That's fairly serious, Canada and the US, but it wasn't worldwide because in Europe and in Australia and around the world using medical isotopes, they were relying on other suppliers. We could have avoided having what just occurred, to have the Parliament of Canada order a reactor that was not safe to be reopened. And when I say it was not safe, I was there to hear Linda Keen's testimony from the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, when she explained that the international standard is that the risk of accident should be no more than 1 in a million. And at the point that Chalk River was forced reopened by the Parliament of Canada, the risk of accident was 1 in 1,000. And her job was only a nuclear safety regulator. She was not in any way mandated by law to even consider supplies of medical isotopes. I really hope this medical isotope issue does not go away, because it's the first opportunity in decades to get an investigation at the parliamentary level into Atomic Energy of Canada Limited, a crown corporation that has sucked up billions of dollars of taxpayer dollars and which has produced reactors that don't work very well, cost overruns, et cetera, et cetera. And really we need transparency about this industry in Canada. By the historical footnote, the only federal minister of energy who ever promised an inquiry into the nuclear industry was Ray Nittition in the Joe Clark government that lasted 9 months. That was the one time we had a government prepared to have a parliamentary inquiry into the nuclear industry. We still need it.